All right, good morning. So we're going to attack pages 6 and 7 in your packets, and it has to do with Mendelian principles and Punnett squares. But the reality is with pages 6 and 7 here, guys, is that pages 6 and 7 is where we really get into like the thinking process of how do we analyze and think about how does an organism get a particular trait, how, what type of parents would produce a particular offspring result, et cetera, et cetera. And so there's a lot of thinking that goes into pages 6 and 7 and a lot of intricacy. So let's do a few problems together. Page 6, number 1, it says, in humans, brown eyes are dominant over blue. Now, for the record, I want you to know that eye color is actually really is a challenging trait. I make it sound like it's monohybrid here, okay? And it's not, right? There's a whole bunch of things that have to happen for you to have a particular eye color. But it helps with brevity if we just allow ourselves to say that big B is brown, okay? And little b is blue, even though it's significantly more complicated than that. Remember, brown is going to mask blue because brown is dominant. So it says we have a brown-eyed man marrying a blue-eyed woman. So the man, okay, we'll start with him. He has brown eyes. So we know for a fact in this example then that he's capital B, right? Because he's brown. But he could be capital B, capital B. He could be homozygous dominant. He could also be heterozygous, capital B, lowercase b. Now, the female on the other hand, right? She has blue eyes, right? Well, blue is little b. And so she has at least one little b for that, right? And she has another little b, and here's why it has to be that way. If she would have gotten a big B, then her phenotype would have been brown eyes, right? Nope, she has the phenotype of blue eyes, so her genotype must be little b, little b. Remember, that's the difference between genotype and phenotype. Genotype is the letters. Phenotype, what does it look like? So what ends up happening is it says brown-eyed man marries a blue-eyed woman, and they have 3 children, 2 of whom have brown eyes. So when they have children together, they get 2 kids who are big B and something, just like with this dad, but they also indeed get a kid who is blue-eyed, right? Well, this blue-eyed kid, guys, is the key to the whole thing and the thinking process for question number 1, and here's why. You see, genetics requires us to get information. The law of segregation says you're going to get 1 allele from your mom, you're going to get 1 from your dad. Well, no matter what here, mom has to either give this little b, right? She's going to give that 50% of the time. Or this little b, she's going to give that one 50% of the time, right? So what ends up happening here is this kid right here had, if they're brown, they had to be big B and actually had to be little b as well. Why? Because whether it was this little b here or this little b here, that individual, okay, would have had to get a little b from mom. Now, here's where we can figure some things out though. You see these little b's, right? It means one of these little b's came from the mom, which makes perfect sense, right? This one is either that one or that one. It could have been either one of them. But this one, so if that one came from mom, this one had to come from dad. Well, therefore, okay, if dad has to give a little b to an offspring, we now know that dad had to be heterozygous for that to occur. And that's kind of the thinking process that goes in, okay, to genetics and some that type of thing, all right? So that is number 1 on page 6. I would like you to fill in 2, 3, and 4 right now. Hit pause right now. Hopefully you hit pause, and now let's go through number 2. So number 2 says a pea plant with green pods is crossed with a plant with yellow pods. All of their offspring have green pods. Every single one. So letter A says, which allele is dominant? Well, since they're all green, I would say that we're seeing that as the dominant feature, right? So green. And then, in order to get yellow pods, little g. Remember, we always put the lowercase of the dominant trait. That's why it's a little g. All right, so B, it says use letters. What is the genotype of the green parent and the yellow parent? Well, the yellow one is the easier of the two, right? In order to be yellow, no matter what, the only way to have yellow pods would be to have a little g and another little g, right? To be homozygous recessive. Yellow, yellow gives yellow. The green one's a little more complicated, okay? So what ends up happening here is in order to be green, had to get one big G. But the other one could have been anything, right? Could have been homozygous dominant, big G, or heterozygous, big G, little g. But the key for me was this idea that we had all the offspring being green, potted, right? It's different from the seeds or the peas themselves. And so for me, because we got 100% green at the end, right? That's a pretty strong indicator that something was dominating every single time. And so in order for that to happen, right, if it was big G, little g, which is not right, then don't you think at some point this little g would have gotten together with one of these little g's and you would have ended up with a yellow somewhere along the way? So therefore, that just doesn't make the most sense. Therefore, big G must be the green parent. Now, letter C says, well, what is the offspring of the parent, or what is the genotype of the offspring? Well, remember, 50% of the time this one, 50% of the time, 50% of the time, 50% of the time. Well, no matter what though, whether it's this one or this one, all of these offspring are from the green one, gonna get a big G. They had no choice but to get a big G. And likewise, all of these offsprings are gonna get a little g from the yellow parent. And so for certain, big G, little g. Now, number 3 says, okay, now we're going to take some of these F1s, right? Because these were the P parents here. This was the P generation. These would be the F1, and it's saying if we crossed them. So if we take a big G, little g, and cross it with a big G, little g, okay? And question number 3 says, use a Punnett Square to find out genotypic and phenotypic ratios. Well, we have 2 letters times 2 letters. So if we were doing a Punnett Square, our Punnett Square would be 2 times 2 for a total of 4. And so what you end up with is this. Now, remember, 50, 50, 50, 50. So let's put this parent, okay, on the side. We'll put this parent across the top. 50% of the time, a big G going to offspring. 50% of the time, a little g. Up here, 50% of the time, a big G. 50% of the time, a little g. So what we end up with our Punnett Square is a homozygous dominant, heterozygous, and a homozygous recessive. So let's do the genotypic ratio first. So the GR. So genotypic, again, is the letters. Well, we have 1 big G, for 2 big G, little g's, for 1 little g, little g. Now, phenotypic ratios, what does the organism actually look like? Well, what ends up happening here is this one would have green pods, this one would have green pods, this one would have green pods. So we'd end up with 3 green, and this one would have yellow, wouldn't it? So we'd have 3 green for every 1 yellow. Alrighty, and now, page 4, or number 4 on page 6. So it says brown coat color in rabbits is dominant and white is recessive. So big B is brown and little b is white. Okay? Suppose you have a group of rabbits, some brown and some white. Letter A, for which phenotype do we know, or for which phenotype do we know the genotype? So which one do we know the letters for? If we have some brown rabbits and some white rabbits, the only way to be a white rabbit is to be little b, okay? It's the only way to have a white one. So we know those for absolute sure. It says, for which one are you unsure, however, is letter B? Well, you're unsure on the browns, and here's why. Big B, homozygous dominant, would give a brown offspring. But so would big B and a little b. So we've done an entire page here, page 6. I'm now assigning you page 7. And then what I'll do is in Schoology, I will place a key to these 2 pages so you can check it over. Now you should know on page 7, okay, there's a dihybrid cross for question number 11, okay? Question number 11, you might not be ready for it. So what you should do is you should do 1 through 10, and then kind of wait on 11 until after you've watched the dihybrid cross video, which will happen, I don't know, one of the next videos coming up in our series. Have a great day.